This is the Dzogchen Sunday Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have studied, practiced, and mastered each school of Buddhism so that you wouldn't have to. This is Qui-Gon Jinn Tuesday evening. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. This evening, let us explore meditation through the lens of Proto-Buddhism. We'll begin by exploring why so many mythologies explore a fall from grace and how this correlates to archaeology. Approximately 300,000 years ago, our ancestors, our Paleolithic ancestors, enjoyed proto-communism, which encouraged them and rewarded them for being flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Approximately 13 centuries ago, our Neolithic ancestors endured the rise of proto-capitalism, which set human morals on their heads and instead coerced us to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. These long lists of adjectives can be ungainly, and so we can think of them in terms of Yin's spiritual matriarchy, or proto-Buddhism, or Yang's religious patriarchy, also known as institutional Buddhism. It is the latter that I feel is referred to by Sturgeon's law, which reminds us how 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. 90% of meditation teachers are enthusiastic to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, to the point of imploring their students to actively focus and actively analyze to the point that their dorsolateral and medial prefrontal cortici become so fatigued that it triggers our amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression. But I've got some good news for you. When we passively cooperate with both aspects of the autonomic nervous system, whose core is our spinal cord, we wind up calming the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala, as well as gently stimulating the empathy for anterior cingulate gyrus, which is fabulous. So now that we understand some of the benefits that come from passively cooperating with both facets of our autonomic nervous system, let's figure out how to do that. It's a two-step process. The first step is simply mindfulness. Let me see if I can adjust climate control. Let's see. Dry, that should do it. So every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, which functions as the core of our sympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. To do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. To, in that manner, notice all mind's antics of perception. Seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like, including the full spectrum of human emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings. Everything, from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. But that begs the question, doesn't it? What are we to do with all this stuff that we noticed? In a word, meditation. You see, every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access both the tippy top and the very bottom of that same spinal cord. These two extremes, working as a team, could be described as the core of our parasympathetic nervous system, which have evolved to help us to physically relax during our exhalation to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel at least a little bit less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even as non-graspable as a vast empty void. You can tell by the use of these two prepositions that we're working with a simile here. And a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. Therefore, we must ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, feels non-graspable to the hand? Now that we've used figures of speech to solve the mystery of emptiness, one more puzzle eludes us. The myth of no self. When we take no self literally, it's like running headfirst into a brick wall. But what if no self was never meant to be taken literally? What if it too was a figure of speech? Think of it this way. Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever act of labeling, whatever sense of self we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel at least a trifle less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even less graspable, at least for a little bit, at least for a moment, until the next inhalation and the cycle begins afresh. Don't let some dim bulb tell you that if you're truly spiritual, you won't feel certain things. Malarkey. Remember, our job is to notice whatever cartwheels across the stage of our mind, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. But it's what we do during our exhalation that helps us to process the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Enlightenment is easy. That is why the Buddha insisted in the second to the final passage of his discourse on the four bases of mindfulness that one could master this path in as little as 7 days. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 6 minutes or so. For the remainder of this evening's live stream, together, let us sit and breathe and notice and relax. Let us put a finer point on it. For the first 2/3 of this evening's meditation, every time we feel air enter our nostrils, let us silently and mentally recite the verb noticing. And every time we feel air exiting our nostrils, let us silently and mentally recite the verb relaxing. Now, please do not make the mistake that I used to make. Please do not actively concentrate upon your nostrils. Rather, treat your nostrils the way a piano student treats a metronome. They're not concentrating on the metronome. They're too busy working with the sheet music and the piano keyboard and their fingers to the point that they're only peripherally aware of the metronome in the background. Softly, gently, unobtrusively. Similarly, as we actively sit in meditation, we are peripherally aware of the various components of our body that make active sitting possible, including our nostrils. But the star of the show is simply noticing the antics of mind and relaxing into their non-graspable nature. checking for questions. Checking for questions. With every inhalation, we are wired to generate a vertical traction between our tuchus and our head. With every exhalation, that traction is wired to relax to a certain degree. Checking for questions. Checking for questions. As we feel our chest swelled with breath, let us silently and mentally recite the verb noticing. As we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale, let us silently and mentally recite the verb relaxing. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 6 minutes or so. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. For Meditate Like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers just like you. In approximately 15 1/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's brunch explanation and group practice of meditating like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.